Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. Spring is in the air and a lot of people are starting their very first gardens. And today I wanted to make a video talking about how to save money gardening. Getting started with a garden and keeping up with a garden can get a little expensive if you don't really know what you need and what you don't need, because there's a lot of people out there who are going to tell you you need this and this and this to have a successful garden, and I just don't think that that's true. I think that you can garden on a budget and have it be a cost-efficient thing for you to do. So the first tip I'm going to give you is to plant in the ground or use reclaimed materials to build your raised beds. Now, there's a lot of raised bed companies out there. I have used some of them, and I think that raised beds can be a really great way to grow, but if you're about to spend a lot of money on a pre-made raised bed, then you might want to rethink that purchase. It's not strictly necessary, and if you have the space to plant in the ground, it's perfectly acceptable, even maybe preferred, to plant in the ground in some places. And so if you are needing to save money, planting in the ground or using reclaimed materials to build a raised bed can be a really great option. So in terms of materials you could use for your raised garden bed, it could be old railroad ties. I've seen cinder blocks used, old bricks, old logs. Anything really works. The point here is not to build something that's going to last forever, but to build something cheaply, right? If you are in the space where you want to build something that lasts forever, then maybe you will have to look at spending a little more money. But gardening in the ground doesn't require any of that infrastructure at all. And if you're concerned a little bit about your soil quality, you can always try and start out with a really large layer of compost on top of whatever you're working with, and that should give your plants a pretty good start. You might have trouble with stuff like potatoes and carrots that you would have to dig or need a really big taproot, but if you feel like you have bad soil, most of the time just adding a ton of compost will work, will be a big help for you. And so on that same note, the second tip is to make your own compost. Now, if you're on a time crunch, like you want to start your garden this month, you might not have the time to do a lot of composting, especially if you don't already have the materials on hand. But if you're in a position where you can plan a little farther ahead, making your own compost, even on a small scale, can be really achievable for you. I have videos talking about how you can start with Bokashi composting, and the Bokashi part is actually a pre-fermentation that helps all of this plant matter break down extra fast, but it does not actually compost it. The composting will happen when you bury your pre-fermented Bokashi in the soil of your garden bed, and that you can do pretty fast. If you make a lot of kitchen scraps, you could probably have fresh Bokashi fermented and ready to dig into a raised bed or into the ground underneath whatever layer of compost you're going to do in a few weeks. But you will probably need still some already done compost. And if you have a lot of materials available to you, you can look into something called the Berkeley 18-day compost method. This is a hot composting method that, if done properly, can produce a really great compost in 18 or a little bit more days, depending on how well you do it. And if you need compost really fast and you don't have any materials to compost, then I recommend buying bulk compost from a compost yard. A lot of places that sell mulch in bulk will also sell compost, and they will also sell things like topsoil, which is cheaper, so that you can kind of fill a space with dirt without necessarily paying top dollar for the really, really good compost for all of that volume if you don't need it. But if you're filling your raised beds and you want to save money and still buy compost, I do actually have a video on how to fill your raised bed cheaply and have it be more sustainably nutritious for your plants. So you can also go check that one out. So the third tip I'm going to talk about is mulching. Mulching is like your wood chips, your leaf mulch, or straw, something that you put on the top of your dirt to protect the dirt from weeds. Mulch also keeps moisture in, so you're going to save money on watering if you mulch. And there are a few good free sources of mulch, at least here in the US. A lot of counties, they'll come around every year and collect like branches and dead trees and stuff that people have piled next to their houses, and they'll take all of that and chip it up and then provide a pile of free mulch to the community. So you might look into if that is available near you. Additionally, if you have trees in your yard, you can rake all your leaves and that can be your mulch. And if you don't have any of that, straw mulch is actually pretty cheap to buy. You can get it for at least like $6-ish a bale around here. There is a mild bit of concern with straw mulch. A lot of times the farmers will spray with a certain herbicide that has Aminopyralids in it, which can be really damaging to your garden, but it's fine for the straw. And so you will probably want to look into that. I'm making a video soon about how to test if your straw is contaminated with this, but it is something to consider if you are going to go the route of straw mulch. So the next tip is that starting from seed can save you quite a lot of money. Started plants might be the only option for some people if you don't have the room to start seeds, but if you're on a very strict budget and you do have the room to start seeds, you can save a lot of money by starting your plants entirely from seed, because a pack of seeds is going to be like $4, and that one plant that's already started is also going to be about $4. So 50 plants, one plant. It's pretty clear that you can save money. And then if you're already starting from seed, you can save even more money by buying seeds in bulk from the feed store. I wish I'd known about this sooner, because you can actually buy like seeds by the pound, whereas these little packs are just a few ounces. Seeds by the pound, so much more economical. We're talking less than $10 a pound for a lot of these seeds. And that's a lot of seeds. That's more than most home gardeners will ever need, and definitely way cheaper than buying the fancy, like marketed to gardeners in the store packs of seeds. Next, I want to talk about cheap trellising options. I'm sure that you've gone to the garden center and you have seen all of those pretty trellises that they have for sale. And while those are really pretty, they are kind of expensive. Something that's a lot cheaper that you can do are cattle panel trellises, like what I have here. And I will direct you to Jess's video from Roots and Refuge on how to make those. And another option is to use something like bamboo or sticks. Anything you can get your hands on, you can use as a trellis. And even though these things don't last forever, they are much, much cheaper than those pretty things that the garden center would have you believe you need to have. The last thing I will say, tip number 6, I believe, is you don't need all the tools. There's a lot of tools out there, and there's a lot of marketing trying to convince you that you need those tools, but there are very few tools that you actually need to garden. And I will say that there are some things that definitely will make your life easier, but especially if this is your first year gardening, just start with the basics, maybe one trowel and a good set of gloves, and that's about it. If you run into situations where you find, I did this by hand and I would really prefer to have a tool the next time I do this, that's when you should go buy the tool. I don't recommend stocking up on all the things that you think a gardener should have as you're getting started gardening, because you'll find, especially in those tool sets that come with, like, I don't know, a gardening bag, things like that. I have one of those sets, and there's some tools in there that I've never touched. And they also tend to not be the best quality tools if you're buying them all in a set like that. And if you're here, you are on a budget. And so you're definitely not buying those super expensive packs of tools. But I will say, I think it makes way more sense to look for where you need a tool and find a tool to fill the need, rather than buying the tools you think you need and then figuring out how to use them. Alright, I know I mentioned a lot of different videos in this video, so if you were waiting to the end to go watch those, I'll link some of the more relevant ones here and everything else will be linked in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.